Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. This is a special edition of The Takeout. Charlie Kirk, one of the most important voices and voter mobilization forces in the MAGA movement, was shot and killed in full public view today at the start of one of his signature Prove Me Wrong events on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Videos circulating online reveal a single gunshot and a wound that eyewitnesses said struck Kirk's neck and resulted in considerable bleeding. Just moments ago, President Trump posted on social media that Kirk had perished, writing, quote, "No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie." This show will focus entirely on this developing story, which is harrowing for a show that is devoted to conversation about politics and civility within the public space. We will explore the consequences for a country that is wrestling with deep political divisions and more frequent spasms of politically motivated violence, with victims, we should note, on both sides of the ideological spectrum. Kirk, 31, was the married father of two young children, a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. Former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley knew and worked closely with Kirk and will join us tonight. And one of the most influential writers in conservative circles, Matthew Continenti, will also join us to talk about Kirk's influence, how it rose, and his close connection with many people in the Trump White House. We begin with Anna Schechter and the latest available information not only on what happened, but what authorities are doing in pursuit of the assailant. Anna?
Well, Major, so many unanswered questions and really confusion right now, even a couple of hours after the event. There is no word that a suspect is in custody. Our teams have been analyzing the video that showed the moment that Kirk was shot. It did appear that the shot came from some elevated position. He was in a vulnerable position because there were elevated buildings around a large open grassy area that you're seeing there. You see students running in the immediate aftermath. Here is the video that we're talking about that appears to show the shot that was fired. We're told a single shot. This is a very challenging crime scene. And if law enforcement is still looking for that suspect, every minute that goes by widens the periphery of places that they need to search. There was especially confusion because we got early reports that a suspect was in custody. In fact, police did arrest a man, but they said that this was not the shooter and that individual was released. So at this time, Major, still a lot of questions.
And this was an amphitheater setting, hundreds upon hundreds there, enthusiastic, very, very up for this encounter. And Charlie Kirk does these things as sort of an open mic event to have a full dialogue with those who are either supportive of his points of view or highly critical of his points of view. And as I've come to understand, Anna, there was no particular security checkpoints at all, no weapons checks, no magnetometers, nothing like this, a real free speech atmosphere. And as I understand it, the university has said that the single gunshot came from some considerable distance. And as I understand it, Anna, there is a building-by-building search going on that campus currently?
That's exactly right. As we're talking right now, police are going building to building, room to room to safely evacuate students, faculty, and staff. That the students were told to hunker down and wait for police to find them and securely evacuate them. That, of course, was immediately following the sort of race to leave that initial area, that grassy open field that we were just looking at. So while there was chaos, then police stepped in to go building to building. That also suggests that there is not necessarily a neutralized threat. We don't know, but it appears that there could be a suspect still at large as we are speaking right now.
And that is very startling news indeed, Anna, but it's important to convey to the audience that this is an evolving, ongoing law enforcement situation in that community, and we will keep you up to date. And Anna, if you get anything else on that front, you can let us know, and we'll come back to you
Will
straight
do.
away. Anna
Thank you.
Schechter, as always, thank you so very much. Christian Overton joins me now. He was a witness to the shooting. Christian, I'm very, very sorry. You saw what you saw. You experienced what you experienced. I am appreciative that you're willing to discuss it. Can you tell me what happened?
Certainly, yes. I attended the event with my 17-year-old son, Ryder Overton, this afternoon. We got there about an hour early and had found some what we thought were good seats. It wasn't until shortly after that we moved down to the fence and were allowed to sit just off from the stage where he presented. Everything went as planned. He actually even came out and handed my son, a couple of hats. So it was a wonderful, wonderful gesture, and we were excited. And after about the second question that was asked, is about the time we heard the shot. I diverted to look up just for a second to see what where the sound had come from, and then seconds later, witnessed Charlie with a hole in his neck and bleeding. It was at that time we laid down on the ground, not knowing what, or how many shots might follow. At that point, it was just a matter of trying to get out of the gates and go to a safe place.
How does this land on your heart, Mr. Overton?
Very heavily. I, as well as Ryder, my son, we're both big Charlie Kirk supporters. It hits home, having it happen here where I actually graduated from college many, many years ago. And it's just a sad day. It's a sad day, and it'll weigh heavy on our hearts for some time to come.
What was the preparation for you and your son? Was there any, I just summarized with Anna Schechter, you might have heard that my understanding, but you were there, so I want to confirm it with you, sir. Was there any kind of security there at all that you felt or experienced?
None whatsoever. There were people in with backpacks, school bags. There was no metal detectors. There was just no one checking anyone coming in. So.
And based on what you saw, were you immediately fearful for Charlie and his health?
By all accounts, when I saw the amount of damage done, wasn't sure that he was going to make it. I was hopeful. His staff did a great job by taking him off the stage immediately, but it wasn't. It happened so quickly, and we were all just at that point concerned about our safety and getting to a safe place.
And how did you go about that, Mr. Overton? I imagine that was a pretty chaotic circumstance.
It was because of the number of people trying to get out the same area that we were. We actually had fallen down, and it could have turned a lot more ugly. But we actually found a break in one of the guardrails or one of the fences there that we were able to get through, and then kept our heads down and ran for as long as we could.
Mr. Overton, I'm lucky enough in this world to be a parent to 3 children. Every parent sometimes gets very difficult questions from their children, hard to answer. I imagine that's a particularly heavy burden on your shoulders this afternoon.
Yeah.
What have you talked with your son about in the aftermath?
Well, we had a discussion about how difficult it is to stand up for your rights, to listen. We spent most of the time going back in silence. To be honest with you, it was just trying to wrap our heads around what we had just witnessed. It was difficult. He's dealing with it in his own space right now, and then we will come together when some of this is lifted a little later.
For what it might be worth, Mr. Overton, I wish you and your son and all in your community the very best as you work through that process, which I guarantee you, I know, will be difficult.
Thank you very much.
Christian Overton, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Michael Watley joins me now, formerly served as the chairman of the Republican National Committee and is running to represent the state of North Carolina in the United States Senate. We'll get to that in a second. Michael, Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you, Major.
I just saw you on the special report. You knew Charlie very well. He was a dynamic force in American politics. This has to be a heartbreaking moment for you.
It is. It is an absolute tragedy. And I think, as big as his role was in politics, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about that. And I think, frankly, there should be. But his passion for politics paled in comparison to his passion for America and especially his family. To have a beautiful wife and two beautiful kids, that was everything to him. And you knew it every time you had a conversation with him.
I want to underscore the dynamic that was present there at Utah Valley University because it's very similar to other things that Charlie Kirk has done. And Charlie goes to all sorts of campuses. And he sits in full public view, welcomes questions from critics, and tries to answer them, and enjoyed, forgive me, the give and take, the back and forth of it. And that created a kind of energy around these events, which was clearly evident before it started. Lots of people were there, very happy and excited to see it. That's something that was not typical in Republican Party politics even 5 or 10 years ago.
No, it absolutely wasn't. And the passion that he brought to every conversation, you could tell. This is a guy who woke up every single day and he was a happy warrior. And he was ready to go out there and help change this conversation. I've got 2 sons, twin boys. Both of them were very active in Turning Point at NC State and in Clemson. And I think that when you think about the outreach that Charlie brought to the conservative movement is absolutely fundamental. But I don't think he brought it because he wanted Republicans to win or because he wanted Democrats to lose. I think he brought it because he wanted America better, and he wanted it better for his family and his kids.
Is there a Trump second term without Turning Point USA?
No, I mean, he was a very influential part of all of the campaign that we put together. I mean, he was involved. I mean, he started this thing when he was 18 years old. I mean, just absolutely stunning. The number of events that I participated in, that the president participated in, other members of the cabinet, have been involved with. Not just in 24, but over the course of really since 16. He has been a very important part of our coalition of the Trump movement. And I think really it's bigger than Trump. I think it is an America First movement. And Charlie was a huge factor. There's going to be a tremendous hole in that movement in our community going forward.
I mentioned at the opening of the show that our country is struggling with a reality in which there is not only very intense political rhetoric, but there has been violence and victims on both sides of the aisle. Maurice Dubois, my colleague, asked you, how did we get here? That's an impossible question to answer. Equally impossible is how do we get out of it? Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, look, I think that right now in America, we need to be focused on keeping our families and our communities safe. At the end of the day, that is the biggest fundamental piece of what the government needs to be focused on. Certainly as a father of 3, that's what I am focused on every single day. And I think that, when we talk about, the escalating conversation in politics, there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of calls saying we need to lower the temperature in politics. I think that's real, right? That every time that we see allegations or we see charges that are going out there that this person is a Nazi or that this person hates America or that this person needs to be stopped at any cost, then that is something that is problematic. When we see President Trump get shot and then a number of weeks later we see a second assassination attempt, that is not right in American politics. And what we saw with Charlie today, I think just kind of compounds that conversation. That we do need to step back and understand what is it that we're fighting for? What is it that we're so passionate about? And reflect truly on where are we going? President Trump made it very clear after he survived being shot that he felt like he had, survived for a reason, and I think that that's very important. And I really do think that we all need to reflect on what it is that we're trying to accomplish here through these political means, and that violence is not acceptable. It is not at all.
And that your political
part of
opponent is not your enemy.
Correct.
You fundamentally believe that.
I do absolutely believe that. I think that when we talk about in any political campaign, you know, what are people ultimately running for? Politics is about helping people. Politics is about lifting up communities. Politics is about making sure that families
And that the
can do
American
better.
experiment, as we've come to know it, continues.
Absolutely.
Continues.
Yes.
Not runs off the rails in some sort of torrent of violence and bloodshed.
Yes.
Do you feel, as a candidate for the United States Senate, different about your personal safety this afternoon as we speak than you did when you woke up this morning?
No, you know, and one of the things about being the RNC chair is that when I was elected by the RNC to be the chair, that changed my life, right? And so I have had to have security systems, you know, put into my home that were advanced, and I had to have security details when I was the RNC chair, and that I had to move around with staff and always, you know, pay attention to these things. You know, as a candidate right now, you know, I'm going to have events in all 100 counties of North Carolina. I'm going to be out and I'm going to be meeting with people. And you always want to be very careful about that. I think that, you know, anybody in this space has to be very mindful from a security perspective, because you don't know necessarily what to expect in any given situation.
Right, but on the same part of that ledger, as a candidate, you have to meet the people.
You do.
You have to see them where they are, as the phrase goes. And that might be at a shopping center, it might be at a school, it might be outside a factory, it might be at a farm, but you have to see them exactly where they are. And you can't bring a phalanx of security personnel to get in their face and do all that sort of stuff. How do you balance that?
Well, I think that we have to trust in the goodness of the people of North Carolina in my particular race, and I think hopefully across the country. You know, but it is a real crushing you know, story that we're dealing with here today.
It is.
And I think, you know, I want to make sure that we continue to go back to the fact, you know, that this man was a husband and this man was a father. Ultimately, that has been what's taken away from us today.
Michael Whatley, it's a hard day. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Major.
And be safe.
Yes, sir.
Ed O'Keefe joins me now. Ed, you got some interesting developments to convey to the audience. Please do so.
Well, Major, as we wait word on whether the suspect has been apprehended in Utah or wherever they may be, our colleague Jennifer Jacobs conveys that there have been discussions internally at the White House and across the administration today about whether other Trump administration officials who don't currently receive some kind of security protection should, in fact, get more protection from either the Secret Service or other agencies. But there are, and while there were several internal discussions about this afternoon, you know, those agencies don't have unlimited staff. So to the point you were raising there with Chairman Whatley about his protection and as a candidate, you know, his concerns for it, there are also those that work across the administration this afternoon here in Washington who are quite concerned. They're all equally, you know, well, they're equally young compared to Charlie Kirk. They're equally high profile in many cases. And if it can happen to Charlie Kirk at a college campus in Utah, obviously there's going to be grave concern that it could happen to others as they go about their business, unfortunately. So that's an early sign of the reaction. The other thing we should convey, Major, if you didn't, forgive me if you did at the top, the president has ordered flags across the country to fly at half-staff until 6 p.m. Sunday in honor of his friend Charlie Kirk. They have lowered them, at least one of them so far, at the White House, and you will see that across the country here in the coming hours as it happens. I think you see them there now lowered at half-staff. So that's another thing that has happened. And we've seen the political reaction continue to pour in from Republicans, of course, but Democrats as well. Just a little while ago, former President Joe Biden and his conveying thoughts of his own and then of the former First Lady, saying there's no place in our country for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones. But I think, Major, one of the things that guys like you and I who do this for a living and our staffs need to remember is there are going to be a lot of people who see this news this afternoon and have no idea who Charlie Kirk is. Mm-hmm. And that's not their fault.
No.
And it speaks to the incredibly digital and algorithmic world that we now live in, that their scroll on a daily basis is not serving them Turning Point USA or Charlie Kirk adjacent content. They have no idea what he's done for the Trump movement, for the Make America Great Again movement, for the Republican National Committee, for GOP candidates up and down the ballot across the country, and the influence he had in putting together the Trump government, the second Trump government, being at Mar-a-Lago last fall during the transition, literally sitting there with the president and a handful of other aides going, that guy, not that guy for this job, that woman, not her for this other gig, and making sure that they could get confirmed and that the Senate delivered the votes necessary. Also the guy that was putting pressure on people like Senator Joni Ernst earlier this year when she raised concerns about Pete Hegseth's nomination to run the Pentagon. He was the one that threatened potential primaries and other political retribution should they not follow through with the president's wishes. He was that kind of an influential figure. And in the world we live in, you know, you may not listen to his satellite radio channel, but a lot of your relatives and friends and coworkers probably did. They'll know who he is, and you should talk to them about who he was and what he did. And the fact that, as the chairman said and others have said, he was a happy warrior. We should be looking for happy warriors on all sides of the aisle and celebrating them and letting them be happy warriors, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not.
Exquisitely well said, Ed, and I think it's worth diving just a bit deeper in that, because for some Americans in the Trump movement, especially young conservatives, this afternoon will be a where were you when you heard the news moment.
Yep.
Deeply traumatizing, profoundly meaningful.
Yep.
And to your point, there'll be those Americans who say, who? Charlie Kirk? And that's what you're driving at. This great, cavernous, algorithmic divide in information, awareness, and appreciation of those involved in our political life, where one set of Americans this afternoon is as emotionally rocked as they could possibly be about someone they might not have known personally but was meaningful to them in politics, and another set of Americans utterly unaware of who this person was or that person's involvement or role in the very governing structure influencing their life. And that divide is part and parcel of what we are and we will continue to wrestle with, and I'm so deeply grateful that you brought that up. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very, very much. Samantha Vinograd joins me here at the table. She is a relied upon and well-versed expert in the field of domestic security, domestic terrorism, international and the like. Begin to walk us through what's going on the ground. Anna Schechter just told us they're still searching the campus of Utah Valley University. That means this is an evolving and still potentially dangerous situation, and that whatever happened escaped the immediate ability of authorities to put a dragnet around that particular individual.
Well, Major, based upon the fact that a suspect has not been identified or located as far as we know, it is entirely possible that there is still an ongoing threat to the public. So right now, law enforcement officials are incredibly focused on trying to ascertain who fired the gun that killed Charlie Kirk. They'll do that from eyewitness accounts by using video taken by individuals at the event and other advanced technology to just try to figure out who the suspect is. And from there, whether it's searching buildings on the campus and or looking through the individual's social media and tracing his or her movements, try to ascertain where this person is so that they can be apprehended and try to mitigate any threats to the public.
And part of that analysis will be the wound itself and the directional relationship, because Charlie Kirk was under this tent. You can see it. Came to somewhere around here. We are from eyewitness accounts and the available video that suggests a sort of area.
Law enforcement officials have a range of different technologies to literally trace where the bullet came from, what kind of rifle or other weapon was used, and then from there to just try to figure out exactly where this individual was standing when the shot was fired so that they can really narrow their search to try to locate the individual's face in video or otherwise. At the same time, there will be an after-action, Major, of how an individual like Charlie Kirk, his death is absolutely devastating. He was such a well-known figure, mass following, how he was speaking at an event that was widely publicized. Everyone knew where he was going to be with some level of personal security, but without any kind of screening for individuals who really just walked up to this event. And it is a sad reality in our country today that individuals with this kind of profile are a target. and there was not a security perimeter. There were not metal detectors as far as we know. So some sort of after action by campus police and others will likely be undertaken.
I don't want to over dramatize this, Sam, but I have to believe that those who were there on scene, university, local authorities, federal authorities, state authorities, are looking at this and saying, this person may well have had intent, some capabilities, and some means to try to get away. And that heightens, I would assume for them, a sense of urgency.
Well, certainly, and every single counterterrorism official that you can encounter will say that the biggest terrorism-related threat facing this country comes from lone actors, individuals who radicalize and mobilize on their own. But again, there was no perimeter here. This was an open-air event. An individual was able to relatively easily carry a weapon onto the premises, essentially able to climb to some sort of elevated position and fire a shot and then disappear. So there were law enforcement resources and emergency resources available on site, but they were not able to prevent the suspect from firing the shot and essentially from leaving the scene.
Sam Vinograd, valuable perspective as always.
Thanks,
Thank
Major.
you. Rhode Island Democratic Senator Jack Reed joins me now from Capitol Hill. Senator Reed, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor.
There you are. This is a very hard day in America.
Yes.
I'd like to get your assessment.
Well, the attack was reprehensible. One of our fundamental principles of the American way of life is the freedom to speak out and to do so without fear of not only intimidation but violence. And it's a tragic moment for the family and for many Americans. We all should stop and pause for a moment and reflect on where we have come from and where we are going. This is absolutely reprehensible.
Reed, I know, and you know better than I do because you're in the cloakroom in the United States Senate, there are conversations almost daily now about what the risk profile is for members of the House, members of the Senate. And these are bipartisan conversations by necessity because, as I mentioned at the top of this show, in these spasms of violence, there are victims on both sides of the ideological spectrum of one kind or another. Charlie Kirk is a grievous victim, the most grievous victim we can think of in modern history. But you have these conversations. What are they like and how are they likely to change?
Well, you're exactly right, Major. The concern is accelerated, particularly after a tragic moment like this, where someone, as we do consistently, speaking to a group of fellow Americans, is suddenly cut down. So it is something that we're concerned about. If there are palpable threats to an individual member of Congress, then the Capitol Police will provide protection. But again, in this world where this violent activity is unpredictable and many times the result of an individual who has not only mental issues but also many other issues and has a weapon, and that's hard to anticipate, but we are concerned about it.
Senator Reed, I imagine this is going to influence the dialogue for the remainder of this week, probably the remainder of this month, and there are a lot of hard issues for Senate Democrats, House Democrats, the Trump White House to resolve, not the least of which is continuing to fund our federal government and avoid a government shutdown. Those can be contentious conversations. There can be lots of sharp elbows thrown. How do you anticipate that playing out? And is your advice to all concerned to lessen the intensity, and that's putting it mildly, of their rhetoric in these skirmishes?
Well, I think that's exactly right, Major. I think what we've seen over the course of the last several years is a deterioration of the sense of community and the sense of common purpose and dialogue. A lot has been reduced to simply political rhetoric on both sides. And we are not going to get to a solution on our major problems, both domestically and internationally, until we come together and communicate. And I think we should be an example of that to the American people. And I must say, many times over the last several years, we've let the American people down by being vitriolic, by being acerbic in our comments. And that goes not just for the Congress, it's also for the White House.
Senator Jack Reed, Rhode Island Democrat, ranking Democrat on the Armed Services Committee. Sir, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Major.
Matthew Continetti is the Director of Domestic Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. He joins us now. He's also author of the book, The Right, The 100-Year War for American Conservatism. Matthew, it's good to have you with us. There you are.
Thank you, Major.
This is a shocking and devastating and deplorable day in American political history. I imagine you have a lot to say about Charlie Kirk's influence, but before the influential part, the human part, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, it's shocking on many levels. It's not just shocking because the attack occurred on a college campus, a place of learning, in broad daylight, and on video, a video that was circulated algorithmically on social media. It was shocking because of Charlie Kirk's youth. He was 31 years old. He was the father of 2 children. He was married. His whole life was ahead of him, and it was stopped needlessly by the assassin's bullet. And it was shocking as well because it happened at a time where we're becoming inured to this violence, Major. So this trend of political violence has been going on for some time, whether it was the 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh, the shooting at the congressional baseball game in the first Trump administration. And then there are the kind of the less political acts of violence, or rather the political violence directed at private citizens, such as the gunning down of the United Healthcare executive last year by Luigi Mangione. This kind of propaganda of the deed, as the 19th century anarchists call it, is returning to America's campuses and college streets. And so it's a very disturbing moment, not just a sad moment for the family and for the conservative movement, but I think for the country as a whole.
And Matthew, I know you are familiar with the fire that was set at Governor Josh Shapiro's home, the attacks that left 1 member of the Minnesota legislature dead, another wounded, Gabby Giffords. So this has happened, as I said when I opened this show. There are victims of the spasms of political violence, which you suggest we have become inured to on both sides of the aisle. And it seems to me that there has to be a conversation about that fact, number one, and a kind of reconciling to a deeper conversation about how to find a different direction.
Right. Well, I think what's taking place, Major, is a polarization that's going far beyond what we were used to the past 20 years or so. We were talking about red and blue America, and we were talking about cultural differences between Republicans and Democrats, NASCAR versus soccer moms and so forth. But what instead seems to be happening is we're breaking apart into 2 different societies, 2 different cultures. And as this process takes place, individuals are feeling that no loyalty, not just to the other side of the political debate, but to the rule of law. And I have to say, you mentioned the attack on Governor Shapiro, of course. That was also because of his Jewish identity. And so these political attacks are a part of the general trend to attack and harass Jewish Americans and supporters of Israel. It's multifaceted, is what I'm saying. And this particular incident is, I think, most shocking and lands most impactfully because here we have an attack on the very roots of a free society, right? What was Charlie Kirk doing? He was speaking to students. He was on a college campus. He was trying to engage in civil debate. He was, as you've been saying on this program, and as everybody knows, a happy warrior. He would listen to the other side at these events. I've seen him do it in the past, and he would engage. And now, whoever killed him didn't just mean to kill him. The killer meant to kill that whole structure that allows us to speak and to deliberate over public policy, public affairs. That's what I think we really have to fight against here. Not just not just enforce the law and deter these assassins, but also to preserve the mechanisms that have kept this country free for 250 years.
And Matthew, I want to ask you, before I let you go, about that dynamic of Charlie Kirk, because it wasn't just on that campus. Obviously, there are associated Turning Point USA groups at, I believe, more than 800 college campuses and some high schools. You can be a provocateur, an influencer in America, and you could have a limited audience. Charlie did not have a limited audience. He had a large and growing audience, which means he was finding something that people were in need of and wanted to be closer to. That seemed to be a very important political dynamic, not only to the Trump White House, but to the Republican movement generally. But I'd like your thoughts on what it meant more broadly in terms of communication, culture, and youth in America.
Well, we often don't think of it, but conservatism in the United States has often been a youth movement. The conservative movement of Ronald Reagan, say, really started on college campuses in the 1950s. And the great
Young Americans for Freedom, YAF.
Young Americans for Freedom. And the great leader of American conservatism for the second half of the 20th century, William F. Buckley, first appeared on the scene as a 26-year-old dynamo from Yale. So in that sense, Charlie Kirk was very much following in the footsteps of an earlier generation of conservatives. He appeared on the scene at age 18, and he was a builder. He built Turning Point USA into an extraordinarily powerful and influential organization, as you've been saying on the program, in terms of turnout, in terms of influence within the conservative movement and Republican Party and Trump administration. So he, I think, represents well the energies behind the Trump movement today. It's been caricatured as a movement of old people, of rural Americans, but what gives it its dynamism is the young people that Charlie Kirk has brought to the movement. And that I think showed itself in the election results last year, where Donald Trump performed much better than expected among college-aged Americans. And the type of party that Donald Trump has brought into being, a Republican Party that includes people of all ethnicities, all races, is, again, I think, a result of the sort of activist work that Charlie Kirk performed so well, but so tragically in such a brief span of time.
Matthew Continetti, I appreciate you coming on the program very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to bring in our panel, Molly Ball, longtime political reporter, and Olivier Knox, senior national correspondent for U.S. News and World Report, and also at the desk, Robert Costa, our senior political analyst. Molly, let me start with you. I'm just going to give you the floor.
Well, I've been thinking about the last couple of times that I spent time with Charlie Kirk, and I spent the better part of a day with him at the Republican convention where he was taping his radio show, and there was a parade of important guests, members of Congress and other and other luminaries in the party. They all wanted to be on his show. He was walking on air because he had been a top advocate for J.D. Vance to be named to the ticket. He really believed in this populist nationalist transformation of the Republican Party that he saw Trump as leading, and he was overjoyed to see that continue in the form of J.D. Vance. And we talked about that at the time. And then later last year, I saw him in Arizona, where he was helping Carrie Lake's campaign, her unsuccessful campaign for the Senate. There were volunteers for that campaign who had flown in from all over the country. And it was because he was talking about his turnout efforts on his radio show. Charlie Kirk was. He had the power to give people ways to act and mobilize them to contribute. He was an organizer. And I really think that he was testament to the idea that a single person can change the country if they work at it. And he became incredibly powerful, really on the strength of his voice, and that was it.
And Olivier, he spoke about politics in a sort of larger-than-life way. This was a civilizational struggle, and he believed that Trump and Trumpism was part of the way America could save itself. And that found a resonance that I think at times even surprised Charlie, but it caught on.
Yeah,
college campuses and elsewhere.
Extraordinary resonance through his various old media and new media mechanisms for getting his message across. You know, we're no strangers to political violence in America. We've had a bevy of presidents assassinated in office. But the system's been really blinking red in the last few years with escalations of threats against members of Congress. I don't want to insult anyone, but random members of Congress. We've seen
federal judges.
And so it feels like we've entered a different era when it comes to political violence, where it's much more broad-based. And I wonder to what degree it comes out of a concern that politics has now become all or nothing, as you said earlier, sort of an existential problem, and that people are losing faith in politics, traditional politics, as a way of working out our grievances and our disagreements.
Robert Costa, the floor is yours.
Covered Charlie Kirk for a long time, and this was a major force in American politics, though he was very young.
And this will be deeply felt within the Trump White House.
Clearly already is. The president.
I mean, so many people within that building knew and worked very closely with Charlie, held him in very high regard. So it'll be a personal moment, a political moment, a national moment for all of them.
Close to Vice President Vance, close to Donald Trump Jr., close to President Trump.
And to Olivier's point about this idea that all or nothingism creeping in, or maybe very widespread in American political life, that seems to be a reality that has taken a horrific turn this afternoon in Orem, Utah, on a college campus.
Violence, the specter of violence is everywhere in American politics right now. Unfortunately, it's part of our history. Think about President Lincoln, President Kennedy, shots fired at President Reagan, political candidates like George Wallace, lawmakers like Gabby Gifford, Steve Scalise, survived shootings. Charlie Kirk was someone who was so happy to be in the arena. I was just listening the other day to his conversation with Governor Gavin Newsom of California, podcast conversation. And Kirk could be a rally presence,
sure,
hand in the air,
provocateur.
But he was really at ease in the college setting or the podcast setting, having a dialogue. And that's where he found so much of a following. People listened to him and found that he was articulate in raising new kinds of conservative arguments that generated such an audience.
And Molly, very quickly, about a minute, maybe less, Charlie made himself relevant. That is to say, he became a force that others noticed and then felt that, like you witnessed, they needed to be around him and they needed to be in his sphere that he created.
Absolutely, and he did it with the simple power of his perspective. And I think, as Matthew Continetti was saying earlier, really refusing to accept as a state of nature that young people were just going to be liberal. He really believed he could go out and he could convince people to believe the things that he believed, and that was incredibly powerful.
Olivier, I was just informed in my ear that we're going to continue our conversation. So you had more than time than I suggested you might. So Olivier, you can go on as long as you want. There is already, as we speak, each and every second we're here, there is a raging social media absorption, reabsorption, recontextualizing, and angry and increasingly angry conversation about what this is, what this isn't, what it represents, what it doesn't represent. That's another factor that we have to absorb and try to weigh.
We're deep into the politics of the algorithm that rewards the most shocking, the most outrageous, and especially the most angering, infuriating kind of content. I don't know how you teach civics to a generation that is coming up right now that will only ever have known social media algorithms and algorithmic news, where you're not being exposed to a large number of topics. You're only really getting deep into a few of them. Social media right now, for all of the wonderful sentiments, sad but wonderful sentiments, bipartisan condemnations of Charlie Kirk's assassination from prominent Democrats, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Josh Shapiro, just everyone coming out. There's a darker side on social media right now. Some folks celebrating the death, and of course, people sharing for clicks and clout the actual video of Charlie Kirk being assassinated.
Olivia Knox, Robert Costa, Molly Ball. It's been a very hard day. I thank you all for joining us. We will continue to bring you updates on the shooting and death of Charlie Kirk. Please stick with CBS News 24/7 for the latest on all of that, plus many other news items. The Daily Report picks up our coverage right now.